Welcome back to New Lucid. Today we'll be taking a look at the Gent65 Suited Edition, a special version of the Gent65, which we have already reviewed and found to be a very unique and cost-friendly custom. This prototype was sent to us by J-Keys for review, but as always that will not affect our opinion or statements in any way. My prototype unit came in the same packaging as the regular Gent65, but the group by units will come in two separate boxes for the board and its accessories. We have this nice ribbon here, and everything else is packaged neatly inside this latched box. First are our two plates, one FR4 and one aluminum. The aluminum plate I have looks pretty rough, but the final version will be E-white and have standard cutouts. Next is the top piece of polycarbonate, the beautiful shiny brass knob, and the hefty bottom case. This is almost entirely due to this back brass weight. Lastly, the hot swap PCB, screws, and screw O-rings came in different packages. Let's get into the specs. The Gent65 SE is an aluminum or polycarbonate burger-mounted compact 65% keyboard, offering both soldered and hot swap PCBs. The soldered PCB supports split caps, split backspace, ISO, and 7U spacebar, while the hot swap PCB is fixed. The USB port is situated on the left side, and like the Gent65, there is no daughter board. Case options are mint, E-white, E-black, or polycarbonate, and knob options are mint, E-white, E-black, PVD brass, or rose gold PVD brass. Plate materials are POM, FR4, aluminum, and brass, but you can also opt for no plate if you're getting a soldered PCB and want to do a plateless build. QMK and VIA are both supported, and the typing angle is 7 degrees. Finally, the base price, which includes the PCB, is $240 for polycarbonate and $250 for the aluminum options, but we'll go into the $260 to low $300 range after adding a plate and knob. Today we have a polycarbonate unit with a PVD brass knob to build. We're going to use some Duroc V2 stabilizers, but this time I also tried out the clear tape mod. This was introduced by Durian Soft Jojo, who made a very clear instructional video on how to perform the mod and its results. It's the same principle as the APS-C and Holy mod, and involves putting dampening material in the same region of the stabilizer housing, but should be a much more lightweight and simple version that can address the flaws of both APS-C and Holy. Depending on its effectiveness, I might make a stabilizer modding video tutorial later. For switches, we're going with Momoka Frogs. These are quite interesting looking and feeling linear switches and have been lubed with 205 grade 0. Since the plate screws into the top case and would otherwise be pretty stiff, I'm going to use the FR4 plate. We're then going to screw the inner assembly to the top piece and the top piece and the bottom piece together. On top of this goes GMK white on black, and the board is good to use. Let's take a listen. So this is exactly what I imagine a burger-mounted polycarbonate board would sound like. It's high-pitched and clacky due to the mount, yet you can still hear some of the hollow and deep sound that's created by the polycarbonate case. I also noticed that it's less muted than the Gent65, which is good. I'd assume the pre-installed PCB tape backing does help with honing in the sound profile of the board a lot, and thus would not recommend removing it when building. Typing feel is kinda interesting. There's a lot more bounce than I expected, and you can see some of this in the sound test, especially near the escape key. And despite this, the board still feels pretty stiff. As for the rest of my review, I recommend watching the Gent65 review first, because a lot of my thoughts on this board are just follow-ups on comments I made there. The board is noticeably hefty. Even though the brass piece is seemingly pretty small, it really packs a lot of weight. The design overall feels like a much more developed version of the original Gent65. There are two pieces for the case, a top and bottom piece. The bottom case is staggered, each helping to add to the angle of the board. The top piece is chamfered, while the bottom piece is not, and I assume this is a cost-cutting measure. And of course, the bezels are extremely similar to the original Gentleman, as well as the inclusion of the knob on the top right. This is the same module as in the Gentleman 65, and again has a tactile turn and pretty heavy click. The board also keeps the placement of RGB LEDs for underglow, though the diffusion this time around is interrupted by the brass weight. For a board like this though, I would keep it off. The strange acrylic foot design that I found a hassle in the original Gentleman 65 has been phased out in favor of standard rubber feet, which helps with both stability and building the side profile of the board. And lastly, due to the design of the case, the USB port is unable to be recessed, which leaves part of the connector itself visible. For material quality, it's a bit difficult to comment since I've only ever owned one other polycarbonate board, being the NK65, and that was fairly low quality and is actually cracked now, unfortunate. From what I can tell, the finish seems good, nice and consistent with only a few minor scuffs on the back and bottom. I'm going to chalk this up as the unit being a proto. When the RGB is off and room lighting is consistent, the top and bottom pieces do look the same color. And while this seems obvious, there are some polycarbonate cases out there that have mismatched top and bottom pieces, so this is very appreciated. And you might have already noticed that my brass weight looks super scuffed and has plenty of machining marks. This is only an issue with the prototype, and the final version will be a pristine matte PVD brass. Unfortunately, the screw threads do not have any sort of metal inserts, which negatively impacts the overall structural integrity of the board. Because of this, I would avoid taking the board apart too many times, just so there's a smaller risk of cracking the polycarbonate. Obviously, with the aluminum versions, this is not an issue at all. So the high $200 range to low $300 range is certainly not low on its own, but for a 65% with brass accents is pretty fair, although I personally wouldn't consider it something to get on a budget per se. Overall, the Suited Edition feels like a more mature and premium version of the Gentleman 65, with quite a bit of aesthetic and acoustic upgrades, and is a great option for those looking for a relatively affordable 65%. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching this episode of Near Lucid. If you like this video, drop a thumbs up. If you have feedback or questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. We'd be more than happy to answer. Also, these videos take lots of work, and by subscribing, you're letting us know that you want us to keep making them. That's all for this video. I'll see you guys later.